Everybody, thanks for watching and thanks for taking the time to purchase and support. And welcome to Book 10 in the Biblical Bible series, which is 2 Samuel. We're going to go back and just look a little bit at 1 Samuel and other books a little bit. And just remember what happened. So end off in 1 Samuel with basically the Hebrews, the Israelites, doing whatever they want to do. Basically disobeying God continually. Remember in Judges, God sends in judges to basically judge Israel and save them from the enemies. But judge after judge, 40 years later, the people sin again and keep on doing evil. And as I pointed out, you would think, God save you and save you from your enemies. You would be true to his word and listen to what he got to say. But it keeps happening over and over again. And we see in 1 Samuel, God sends Samuel in to basically, straighten the people out. And Samuel does so, get the people on the right track. But he starts getting old. And the people are like, you get ready to die soon. We want you to basically appoint a king. And Samuel's like, no, you don't need a king. All you need to do is just basically trust in God, and God will basically deliver you and save you. Follow the commandments of Moses, follow God. That's all you need. And the people are like, no, we want a human ruler, king to lead us. So, God is pissed and he sends him Saul. And Saul is evil. He only really care about, pleasing the people more than pleasing God. He basically doesn't teach the people about God and following God's commandments. And, Saul basically leads them to a path of destruction where they, getting conquered over again. God eventually sends David. And Saul is, of course, jealous of David. And he tries to kill David multiple times. Even though he promised not to kill David, he tries to kill him again. Until eventually Saul dies and David takes over. But, as we're going to get into more with 2 Samuel is David and his rulership. But, first, 2 Samuel, really important books. 2 Samuel is especially important, as well as 1 Kings, which is next, because of what it means to Jews and Christians as far as what the book is saying. There's a lot of information in there that really pertains to Jews and Christians as to where, the origin of a lot of the main focal points of their doctrine begins at. And a lot of it is in 2 Samuel, Kings, and 2 Kings, which they were once all one book, one story. Of course, they've broken up in these 4 different books. The Masonic version is important, which is basically like a King James version, but, the Masons use this for a reason, which you'll see in 1 Kings, which is the next book after this. But 2 Samuel, we're going to get into this and look at what's taking place and a lot of the contradictions and issues with this book. And it's a lot to it. So, let's get into this. So now, 2 Samuel, let's go verse 1. Now it came to pass, after the death of Saul, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites, and David had abode 2 days in Ziklag. It came even to pass on the 3rd day that, behold, a man come out of the camp of Saul with his clothes rent, which tattered, ripped up, and earth upon his head. And so it was, when he came to David, that he fell to the earth and did obeisance, which means like to pay homage. And David said unto him, From whence comest thou? And he said unto him, Out of the camp of Israel am I escaped. And David said unto him, How went the matter? I pray thee, tell me. And he answered that the people are fled from the battle, and many of the people also are falling and dead, and Saul and Jonathan his son are dead also. And David said unto the young man that told him, How knowest thou that Saul and Jonathan his son be dead? And the young man that told him said, As I happened by chance upon Mount Gilboa, behold, Saul leaned upon his spear, and lo, the chariots and horsemen followed hard after him. And when he looked behind him, he saw me, and called unto me. And I answered, Here am I. And he said unto me, Who art thou? And I answered him, I am an Amalekite. He said unto me again, Stand, I pray thee, upon me, and slay me, for anguish is come upon me, because my life is yet whole in me. So I stood upon him and slew him, because I was sure that he could not live after that he was fallen. And I took the crown that was upon his head, and the bracelet that was on his arm, and have brought them hither unto my Lord. So now we know, if you read 1 Samuel 31, remember, either this guy is completely lying or this is a huge contradiction. And it doesn't really come up that, it doesn't say that the guy is telling a lie to glorify himself and so on and so forth. He's saying this is what happened. And then when you understand the story, it's if he came and he saw Saul, and Saul spoke to him and asked him to kill him, either he was there and he's seen what happened with Saul and the armor bearer, and he's just lying about the story, or it's a huge contradiction. So when you go back and read 1 Samuel 31, it says here, now the Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled before the Philistines and fell down slain in Mount Gilboa. And the Philistines followed hard upon Saul and upon his son. And the Philistines slew Jonathan and Abinadab and Melchishua, Saul's son. And the battle went sore against Saul. And the archers hit him, and he was sore wounded of the archers. And Saul said unto his armor bearer, draw thy sword and thrust me through therewith, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through and abuse me. But his armor bearer could not, for he was sore afraid. Therefore Saul took a sword and fell upon it. And when his armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, so the armor bearer, seeing that Saul is dead, he fell likewise upon his sword and died with him. So Saul died, and his 3 sons, and his armor bearer, and all his men that same day together. So remember, the Amalekite said that he seen him thrust upon his spear. It says in 1 Samuel 31 that he fell upon his sword, and that's how he died, and that he was dead, and that the armor bearer killed himself after that, and that they was dead, and everybody was dead. So how did he come after the fact and say he was, fell upon his spear, and so on and so forth? So contradiction. The Amalekite is probably lying, and if you continue to read, it's probably he was probably trying to get favor with David, hoping that David would give him some kind of reward for saying that he killed Saul. But David does not. David just basically has him killed for doing that, because remember, no matter what Saul did to David, David still respected Saul because he was anointed of God, supposedly. And he was pissed that he was dead. So we're going to keep going and get into this whole thing, because there's a lot that happens, once Saul's dead, and then you have David basically taking control of Israel, for a period of time, but not without dilemma. Now, 2 Samuel is important for Christians for the whole forgiveness thing. I mean, really, 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, all these books we've been reading, when you think about it, you're talking about the ultimate disrespect to God and the ultimate, wrongdoing, in front of God, and still being forgiven and still being looked at as chosen. So a lot of the Christians and Jews look at this as we can do anything. It's the scapegoat book. We can do whatever we want. We can sin, and God's still going to forgive us. This is why Christians live their life the way they do. They say they're for God and they're going to do this and that for God, but then we look at their lives and they're continually sinning against God. Because one, now I doubt they even read the book to know this, but most of them, the ones who do, understand this part, or they heard it in church. But when you're reading, these books, the first 9 books, when you get into 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, as we is now, and Judges, we continually see these people sinning and being forgiven. And David is like the poster boy for Judaism, Christianity. He is the foundation. His generation he's the foundation for his generation that's going to lead to the birth of Solomon and, of course, Jesus Christ. So if David is looked at, as I said, the poster boy, everything is about David, and David's crazy. David's a sinner. And when you understand, how he is, and most of these people they sick, they crazy. And one of the things the Bible is trying to show you, that one, God's chosen people, is something wrong with them. That you can be sick, you can be crazy, you can sin against God, you can do whatever, but because you are chosen, because you repent, because you do right by God, eventually God can forgive you. So this lets people, these regular Christians we see walking around sinning and listening to stuff they ain't supposed to be listening to, and doing things they ain't supposed to be doing. This allows them, when they read in these chapters, to be like, David did it, everybody else is doing it. They know God is real. They sinning and God is forgiving them. So people looking at this as we can just do whatever we want and sin, but they're not reading the book, so they don't understand the consequences of that. So you have David, completely crazy, on and off. He gets it right later on, as we'll talk about. But these people David, Saul, and I don't understand how some people look at Saul and favor Saul. Saul is given a lot of credit later on, as we'll see. But David is the one who is the foundation, as I said, for Christianity and for Judaism. And remember, as we'll see here, God reestablishes his covenant through David, with Israel, so that his generations will live on and basically be the foundation for his church and for what will later be Christianity. So David he's huge. And Judaism, Christianity, and Islam as well, when you understand. But you got to take a look at God's chosen people. Even when you go back, you look at Lot. Remember, Lot's daughters, they basically get him drunk so they can have sex with him and impregnate themselves. Later, you had, remember, Lot's son, Ben-Ami. He marries one of Lot's daughters, one of the ones who tried to get him drunk and have sex with him. So his son marries his sister, and they are the foundation for the Ammonites, which we'll talk about later on as well. So their whole generation is from that. So you have so many generations of people coming from sick people. And even when you look at Moses, remember Moses was telling the Israelites to kill all the men, children, kill them all, but save the women, children for yourself. We're talking about people who ate their babies, sick people. This is what they want to pound home in the beginning and get you to understand that these people have done unspeakable, crazy, insane stuff, yet God has forgiven them. And this, as you'll see later on, jumps into the whole thing with, the Bible being in the prison, Bible being in the court system, and people being able to do whatever they want and ask for forgiveness and be forgiven for their sins. But when you think about it, and even just the rationality of God himself, because you have other people that's doing far less things, and one, they don't get talked about, but God is not destroying them. God is not treating them the way he's treated, some of these other people. But you'll see, and even after the whole out of Egypt thing with the Exodus, which was bullshit, of course, Egypt still stands. Egypt is still ruling, and as you continue to read through the Old Testament, you'll see a lot of stuff where Egypt comes into play, and it's like, okay, after all that, how is Egypt even dealing with the Israelites? And this is trying to give validity to the Hebrews. But let's continue. So now, as we see with everybody sinning and doing crazy things, and God just keep giving them chance after chance after chance. And it's that same thing that David tries to embody when he's basically dealing with Saul. Even though Saul tried to kill him on multiple occasions and did unspeakable crazy things to the people, and he did evil stuff. Remember, God sent an evil spirit onto him as well. So we talked about that. But David still has an attitude that Saul is like this great person because he's anointed. He's saying here in 23, Saul and Jonathan were lovely and pleasant in their lives, which was not true. And in their death, they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles. They were stronger than lions. Ye daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, who clothe you in scarlet with other delights, who put on ornaments of gold upon your apparel. How are the mighty fallen in the midst of battle? O Jonathan, thou wilt slain in thy high places. Which, as we know, Saul tries to kill David multiple occasions. So for him to be saying this is like, dude, this dude tried to kill you multiple times. What's going on? This is to put upon your mind that no matter what happens and what you do, as long as you're walking with God and everything is cool with you and God, that you're supposed to be forgiven, which is bullshit. So this is what they want to press upon people when this is being taught in 2 Samuel. Because as I said, if you read it straight through, there's no way you're going to read this and look at everything Saul did and look at what's going on and say, one, you're going to say God is crazy. Like, what the hell is he doing? Like, these people are sick, kill them all and start over. Two, what the hell is the other people that you killing doing that's so bad that's worse than eating babies and sacrificing people and all this crazy stuff that these people have been doing? What are the other tribes doing or other people on the planet doing that's so worse, that's worse than what these Israelites is doing? And all they are simply doing is not worshiping the God of the Bible, that if he was God and the creator, they will be worshiping him. If he's powerful and everything like that, as he should be done with the Hebrews, he should just be coming down and talking to the people and saying, this is why we need to do that, instead of going through men. As he can see that these people are obviously crazy and that they're not going to follow what he's doing. It's been, centuries, and these people, he's done so much for them, and these people are still going against him. So this is to press upon your mind, no matter what. This is supposed to be how it is and how God is, which don't make sense. Okay, so Saul's dead. David mourns him, sings songs and everything like that. Then he heads to Hebron, where the northern tribe of Judah basically anoints him king. Now remember, Saul had a commander, Abner. Abner basically is in control of Saul's, last remaining son, who is Ishbosheth. So Ishbosheth is basically getting support now. And they gather support from the southern tribe of Judah, and they basically anoint Ishbosheth king. So you have in the north David king, being anointed by the northern tribe of Judah, and then Abner gained support for Ishbosheth since he is, Saul's son, and they crown him king. And of course, they clash. So they have little battles, skirmishes back and forth, because one wants to be recognized over the other. So it says here, and this is 2 Samuel 3, 6-12. I'm going to read real quick. And it came to pass, while there was war between the house of Saul and the house of David, that Abner made himself strong for the house of Saul. And they call it the house of Saul because Ishbosheth is still Saul's son and still Saul's house. And Saul had a concubine, whose name was Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah. And Ishbosheth said to Abner, wherefore hast thou gone in unto my father's concubine? Basically asking him, did you have sex with my father's concubine? Because when a crown is passed down from, father to son, the son basically inherits everything from the king, including his concubine. So it's like saying, why are you sleeping with my girl? Basically what he's saying to Abner, who basically got him crowned king. Then Abner was very wroth for the words of Ishbosheth, and said, am I a dog's head, which against Judah do show kindness this day unto the house of Saul thy father, to his brethren and to his friends, and have not delivered thee into the hands of David, that thou chargest me today with a fault concerning this woman? Basically saying that, did I not do all this stuff for you and get you crowned king and, be respectful to your father's house and everything like that, to your family? Why are you accusing me of this? So do God to Abner, and more also, except as the Lord hath sworn to David, even so I do to him, to translate the kingdom from the house of Saul, and to set up the throne of David over Israel and over Judah, from then even to Beersheba. And he could not answer Abner a word again, because he feared him. And Abner sent messengers to David on his behalf, saying, whose is the land? Saying also, make thy league with me, and behold, my hand shall be with thee, to bring about all Israel unto thee. So Abner is basically pissed that he got accused for sleeping with one of Saul's concubines, and he basically sends somebody to talk to King David, because he's ready to trade. He's going to switch and go and to the side of King David to try to help David get control of all of Israel, because he was pissed about this. So that's what he does. He sends somebody to let David know, this is what I'm trying to do. So Abner sets out to trade on Ishbosheth, and he's going to meet up with David. Now, remember, I think I said that David, he had support. He was anointed king by the southern tribe of Judah, and Ishbosheth, the northern tribe of Judah. So if I said it reversed, that's what it was. But Abner's headed to speak to David, and he goes and he talks to David. And David basically is saying to him, do your thing, go get support, so on and so forth. Wait a little bit, but then you got to go because the people can't see that you're here, because what they're doing is covert. So eventually Abner leaves, and he goes to try to get support from the northern tribe to basically recognize David as the only king. So he leaves, and then on his way in now you have Joab, and Joab is David's general. Now what happened was, during those fights that the house of David had with the house of Saul, Joab's brother was killed, and he was killed by Abner, who just left. They basically catch up with Abner, and he kills Abner. So when David finds out about it, he's pissed. He's like, yo, this dude was about to do this, and he's going to help us out. So the people in the northern tribe are basically, they hear about the whole thing, and they are impressed that David didn't kill Joab for what he did to Abner, even though Abner was trying to help him out. And eventually they didn't really like Ishbosheth at all anyway. So two of his men basically sneak in his room, and they basically kill him and cut his head off. Brings Ishbosheth's head back to David. Now, this is a supposedly anointed person of God and son of Saul. So David is basically pissed when these men come back with his head, and he's like, y'all cowards. Y'all basically go into a man's room that's anointed, who gives you the right, and you cut off his head. This man is a good man and man of God. God is making sure he was in power, so on and so forth. We had our disagreements, but he still was a man of God. So David basically kills these men and basically cut off their arms and legs and hang them up to show people this is not what you're supposed to do against one of God's anointed, sick, crazy stuff. So this is what happens. So again, the people in the north see this, and everybody hears about what happened, and everybody hears that, even though these men basically brought the head of his enemy to him, that David was such a good man that he still punished these men for what they did, and that's not what he wanted. The people was impressed by that. They didn't really have no choice anyway, because he was the only person left to rule. So you had the north and the south basically join together, and this is how David becomes king of all of Israel, and he is basically anointed king of all of Israel after his enemies is basically dead and gone. So that's basically the origin story for David having control of Israel. When you go back and look, and at almost every point you're going to see David being faithful to God for a while, but still, as it pertains to just being a good person, he's going out, he's murdering people, killing kids and babies and so on and so forth, because God says they're not following him. So remember that. But you got to understand, the elders anoint David king of all of Israel. The first thing David does is go to Jerusalem. Now understand, as I just said before, the Bible doesn't talk about these kingdoms that is being basically destroyed by the Israelites. They never talk about the people and what they're doing and so on and so forth. But remember, he goes into Jerusalem. And what is Jerusalem to these people? Everything. So we're talking about David coming into Jerusalem is the foundation for Judaism, Christianity, Islam as well. It's everything. What we got to understand is, one, it was called Jerusalem before David got there. And it was important to the Jebusites before David got there. These people had this land and been here for over 1,000 years before David. So now it's important to these people. Now it says here, Jerusalem is a city in the Middle East located on a plateau in the Judean mountains between the Mediterranean and the Dead Sea. It is one of the oldest cities in the world and is considered holy to the three major Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It says 1000 BCE. Bullshit. There's no King David around that time, as we understand it. We understand that the Egyptians was ruling that land during this time anyway. But we always hear about Jerusalem. King David, Jerusalem. But you also hear about, of course, Zion. Zionism. What are the Zionists doing? Zionism is connected with Judaism. Zionism is connected with Israel and the Jews. It's everything. You always hear about Zion, Zion, Mount Zion. And when you hear Zion, when you hear Jerusalem, the first thing that's popping into your head is religion. Judaism, Christianity is the first things that's popping into your head. But none of these belong to these people. They belong to the Jebusites, who were Africans, black people. So Zionism. So it says here, Mount Zion. Mount Zion is a hill in Jerusalem located just outside the walls of the old city. The term Mount Zion has been used in the Hebrew Bible first for the city of David and later for the Temple Mount, but its meaning has shifted and it is now used as the name of ancient Jerusalem's western wall. Zion was already Zion before they called it Zion. The Jebusites called it Zion. Zion is hills. That's where they built their fortress. They basically built like a fort there that was on top of the hill. When David came with the Israelites, they destroyed it and they built what would be the foundation for their churches, so on and so forth, on that mount. But before all that, the Jebusites had basically a hilltop fortress there that they had built and they had established for a long time. And then here comes David to basically take it away from the Jebusites. Now I'm saying here, 2 Samuel 5 verse 6, it says, "And the king and his men went to Jerusalem unto the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, which spake unto David, saying, Except thou take away the blind and the lame, thou shalt not come in hither, thinking David cannot come in hither. Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, the same is the city of David." So that's basically what it says in 2 Samuel about the Jebusites. That's it. David comes in there, basically takes the land from them. But when you read in the Bible, you already read about the Jebusites before. Now understand, one, that the Jebusites come from the line of Jebus. Jebus is the grandson of Ham, which Ham, as they say, is the African race, the black race from the line of Noah. So if you remember back in Judges 19:10, it says, "But the man would not tarry that night, but he rose up and departed and came over against Jebus, which is Jerusalem." This is long before David. "And there were with him 2 asses saddled, his concubine also was with him. And when they were by Jebus, the day was far spent. And the servant said unto his master, Come, I pray thee, and let us turn into the city of the Jebusites and lodge in it." So you're talking about a city of people who don't worship this God of the Bible, that we can see by reading the Bible that they were coming in and out of that city, that it was a city, that people were coming in and lodging in there, meaning that they had civilization that was established for over 1,000 years before David. David comes in, wipes it out. There's no explanation. There's no reason. And as I talked about in the Ancient History series, this is what the Bible is talking about when it's talking about the Israelites coming in and taking lands from people. These people are African people, and that's all it's elaborating on. All the stories are bogus. All the stories are put there to give you validity to the Bible, one, but to really give you an explanation as to what happened to these African tribes or these African lands that they don't even really talk about. But you are supposed to believe, as a Christian or a Bible believer, that these people was just against God, and God sent his anointed to come and wipe these people out because they was doing wicked, evil stuff. None of which the Bible really elaborates on, but they do elaborate on the sick, crazy stuff that the people that's supposed to be chosen by God is doing. And we have to ask ourselves, one, what could these people, have been doing that was worse than what the Hebrews were doing? But it doesn't talk about that. So, you have people that look at this and they don't really get the picture that it's giving you the conquering of African territories. David, a big part, taking Jerusalem from the African people, from the Jebusites, and then it becoming, the staple, the promised land, the holy land, the number one place for Jewish worship, and it being the place that God reestablishes his covenant in Jerusalem, and God basically stamps this as the Holy Land, the place. This is where everybody's supposed to come. And it's like, okay, but you took the name of the land from the people, who already named it. They didn't rename it. David named it the city of David, but they still call it Jerusalem. They still call it Zion. It's still Zionism. And all of this stuff goes back to African people and not them. So a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't even know who the Jebusites is. And as I said, it's no proof of Jebusites, just like it's no proof of David. But it is proof that this land belonged to African people long before the supposed King David existed, which there's no proof of his existence. So now, again, as I said, they're trying to paint this picture of these people being, just normal, but somehow clinging to their faith in God, that God is forgiving them. So, David, when they talk about him today, is supposed to be like this perfect, Jew or perfect believer in God, and it's not the case. So, just like all the other people been sinning. So we talked about before, as you read, you had judge after judge after judge come in, deliver the people, they keep on sinning. It's something wrong with these people, that they are evil, they keep sinning, but these are God's anointed, his chosen people. So David is no different. David sins. God forgives David. So we know today, David is everything. David is looked at more so than Moses. And Moses is the one that supposedly brought him out of Egypt. So everything is about David, everything is about him. But he's a sinner. He's crazier than Moses ever was. But let me first remind you of why God kills Moses. Remember, God kills Moses. Moses is not allowed to see the promised land, even though he was the one who went through hell with the Israelites, them complaining and bitching and moaning and wandering and so on and so forth. He went through crazy shit. And he was sick too, but he ain't do with anything crazier than David did against God. Our standards, yes, killing little kids, that's just sick. But against the Bible standards, he didn't do nothing crazy. But remember, in Numbers, you had the Israelites wandering. They're thirsty as hell. They feel like they're about to die, and they complaining like, what the hell is going on? Moses, give us some help. So, Moses and Aaron basically, asked God for help. And it says, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, take the rod and gather thou the assembly together, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak ye unto the rock before their eyes, and it shall give forth his water, and thou shalt bring forth to them water out of the rock, so thou shalt give the congregation and their beast drink. Okay, easy enough. And Moses took the rod from before the Lord, and he commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock, and he said unto them, hear now, ye rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand, and with his rod he smote the rock twice, and the water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their beasts also. This pissed God off. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, because ye believed me not, to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore ye shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them. And that's it. This is why they wandered and didn't get brought into the promised land, because Moses didn't give God the glory for giving them the water. Now, when God was giving out those instructions, he didn't say, hey, Moses, make sure to give me credit for this, all right? Because I'm doing y'all a favor. I'm saving y'all life. Make sure to give me credit. He didn't say that. So Moses just like, okay, boom, I'll give y'all water. And this is the sin that caused Moses and the congregation their, entrance into the promised land, and the reason why Moses wasn't allowed in. That's what it was. That's why Moses was killed. That's why he didn't go to Israel, because he forgot to say, oh yeah, God gave us this water. As if Moses is all powerful, so on and so forth. And two, if this is what God wanted, when Moses struck that rock twice, why he make the water come out? God should have just been like, man, I'm not giving y'all the water until you give me credit for this. Oh shit, my bad, God. Yeah, this is from God, y'all. Because he's been praising God the whole time. And the people know that his power supposedly come from God. And one, if I see a man part the freaking Red Sea and bring us out of Egypt, one, just parting the Red Sea is enough. Like, why are we questioning anything else this man does? Everything, we're going to follow everything. This dude just parted the sea. So it's another reason why they try to mix in magicians, sorcerers, and so on and so forth, to get people to think that, well, maybe the congregation just believed that he was a sorcerer and that he had powers. But even so, you would think that the people, even following a sorcerer, would be obedient to him and what he commanded, because his display of power. But these people are just stupid. They crazy. But this is the reason why Moses doesn't make it into the promised land. That little teeny thing. So now, what the hell did David do? David does something far worse. So David is out on his rooftop, his pervert ass, and he's basically watching a woman named Bathsheba bathe. So I guess they ran out of stupid names to give this woman, so they wanted to give her something that corresponds to the situation, so they named her Bathsheba, or however you want to pronounce it, but it's spelled Bathsheba. She's bathing in Bathsheba, and David's on the rooftop of his palace and he's watching her bathe. So David basically calls to her to come up. Long story short, he has sex with her and he gets her pregnant. Problem is, she's married. She's married to one of his soldiers, and his soldier is basically really loyal to David. He's a good dude. His name is Uriah. And Uriah, David calls him to the palace and everything, and he sends him home. Wife's pregnant and everything in the house. He think, of course, it's his. But Uriah felt bad because, the servants and the other men were sleeping outside. And Uriah, I got this nice house, and I don't feel right going home. I'm going to sleep out here with everybody else. So, when David comes out and sees him, he's like, why are you still here? He's like, I felt bad. Everybody else is sleeping out here, and I want to go home to this nice house. So, feeling the guilt, David's like, I can't take this shit no more. I got to kill this dude. So he basically sends him on a suicide mission. And he basically tells Joab to basically, when y'all go out to the next battle, go to the worst spot, put his ass in the front lines. Put him in the front line and let him get killed. And that's what I want to happen. And that's basically what Joab does. Now, understand, David already knew before he hit that she was married and who she was married to. He already knew who she was, but he still did it. Then he sends this nice dude Uriah, out to his death to basically die because he wanted to basically, take his wife. Way crazier than Moses just forgetting to say, oh yeah, God gave you all this water. You already know that though. So the David problem solved. Dude's out of here. I ain't got to deal with him. It's a crazy battle that takes place. A lot of people get killed in that whole thing. And, Joab comes back and let him know that, he was killed. And of course, when his wife hears that he's dead, she weeps. But David's like, okay, I got it all to myself now. But nothing compared to what Moses did. I mean, what Moses did was small. For him to not be everything he went through, as long as he lived, to not, make it into Israel after all that because, he forgot to give, God mention. It's just crazy compared to what David does. And David is still basically given the, what Moses set out to do. He's given that honor to bring the people in. And you got to think about it. I mean, it's one of the things that always piss me off about the Bible. And when I debate with Christians about this whole thing, it's like you can't give people common sense and then do stupid shit and expect them just to, not say nothing about it. You take us out of Egypt, we got to run from the Egyptians through the goddamn Red Sea. We wandering in the desert, and you're supposed to be God who supposedly can just snap his finger and we in the promised land. Why do we got to go through all this stuff? Why do we got to fight? Why is it that, I'm a chosen person? I'm following what you tell me to follow. I'm looking at this guy say, hey, don't do nothing wrong. Chill out, cool, worship God. And then I get killed because this dickhead don't want to listen to what I'm listening to and what we're being told. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I got to die because nobody else is. And that's basically what's happening to a lot of the Hebrews. A lot of them are being killed, and children as well, because of the stupid shit that other Hebrews are doing. It's not fair. It don't make sense. And it's frustrating when you really think about it. When you read it, it's like, come on. All these people are going to die because of the actions of one person. How fair is that? What's fair about that? And then you look at the fact that God is killing people over, stupid shit, and people doing even crazier stuff and surviving. And supposedly these people who are not worshiping God doing more outrageous stuff, but yet they still exist. And we got to go, put on armor, swords, and go and fight these people, risk our lives. And you can just, snap your fingers and they're gone. And then everything is the way it's supposed to be. But this gets into the psyche of these Christians who want to believe that there's some kind of mystical understanding to all this that trumps common sense. And that, it's just a lesson that God wants to teach these people and they're supposed to learn a certain way. But after hundreds of years, thousands of years of these people not listening, when they had the ability to witness God's power themselves. Like I said today, if we seen God and seen his power today do something for us, we will follow him, unquestionably, period. Especially when it was, from God. These people have that advantage. And through the stories and everything that's passed down, these people know what's going on. They know what happened to the prior civilizations of their people that was wiped out because they didn't obey God. So you would think these people would smarten up and be like, yo, we need to chill out and let's follow him. So David is supposedly given credit for being the one who finally brings these people together. But it turns out, as I said, that he is crazy. He's just as crazy. he sins and he does what he does, and Uriah is killed, an innocent man. His wife is taken and knocked up because of David's shit. So what happens is you have Nathan, prophet of David. He comes and he tells David a story. First God talks to Nathan and says, "Hey, listen, I need you to go tell this to David real quick because David fucked up." So Nathan goes to David and he says, "Listen, man, let me tell you something. It's this rich man. He has a lot of cattle. He has a lot of sheep, right? And there's this poor guy who only has one. So the rich guy," and I'm paraphrasing here, "the rich guy basically has a friend coming over, but he don't want to use none of his own cattle to prepare for the friend coming over. So he goes and he takes the one cattle from the poor guy. All the cattle that he got, all the sheep that he got, he could have took any one of them and prepared it for this guy that's coming to visit, but instead he takes the poor man's cattle and uses that, to basically show his friend." So David is pissed. He's livid and he's like, "Who is this? He's dead. I'm going to kill him." And Nathan's like, "Yeah, it's you, dickhead." And he's like, "Huh? Yeah, God gave you the kingdom. You got wives, concubines, all you got. Yet you take Uriah's wife and then you send him off to his death." And he's scratching his head like, "Oh, damn, God saw that? This is another thing." And again, this plays into the whole Christianity thing. If you know, especially in this case, because you're talking about David who knows God and God sees all, knows all, supposedly. He knew, like, come on, man. This is how you know this is a story. He know damn well God's going to know what you've done and that you killed somebody. Don't, when this person die, God knows that somebody's dead? And God's supposed to know this and be in charge of these people's soul? So, damn, you're right. How'd you get here? Well, David sent me in the battle. And come on. So it's common sense is not registering here that he would think God would not know. But he does it anyway. So Nathan tells him, and then, he's like, "Well, this is what's going to happen." David's actions is going to lead to the death of a lot of people. What he did by having his child and so on and so forth. It's going to lead to the death of a lot of people. But he tells them that, wife's pregnant, he knows, but the baby's not going to live. He tells them that, like you had sex with Uriah's wife and it was in secret and you done your dirt in secret, but your neighbors are going to basically have sex with your wives and everybody's going to know about it. It's going to be public. And as I said, your son is going to die. He's not going to survive. And, David is, he's crazy. He's like repenting and he's sorry and so on and so forth. And this is supposed to be the explanation as to why God forgives him, because even though he did what he did after this, David basically repents and he changes his ways and he apologizes and so on and so forth. And God basically forgives him. So, after all that, he's forgiven. But, Nathan tells him what's going to happen. He leaves out. About 7 days later, as soon as he leaves the house, the baby becomes sick. And about 7 days later, the baby dies. The son that he has with Bathsheba. So it says here, just 2 Samuel 12:24. And David comforted Bathsheba, his wife, and went into her and lay with her. And she bare a son. And he called his name Solomon. And the Lord loved him. Now understand, this is the birth of King Solomon, who is huge, who is everything to Freemasonry and to, Judaism, because Solomon does a lot. And God tells Nathan, tell David, since you did what you did, I wanted you to be the person that built my temple, to basically build the house that I will dwell in. But you messed up. So your son will be the one who builds my temple. And that's what God tells Nathan to tell David. So, David was cool with that. But this is the foundation. This is where Solomon comes in. It's a lot that goes on before Solomon, takes the throne. But it's important to understand how he comes in, And again, we will look at this as impure, as something that's like wrong. It's like basically use your power to have sex with a woman who was married and you kill her husband and it caused the death of one child. It's going to cause the death of other people, as you're going to see in a second. It's all good. because Solomon's coming and Solomon's going to, he's going to take care of stuff. Think about this. I mean, this is the thought process that if you really read in this book, you got to think about all this. It's sick. It's crazy. But this is what Christians get all riled up in and supposed to believe that this is somehow all good. When think about what we're reading here. This is sick. This shit is crazy. But it's supposed to be okay because it has to do with God in the Bible. You're supposed to just forget about the sickness because it got to do with the Bible. It's crazy. And this is how people allow stuff to happen. This is how these Christians rationalize things. So you have Bill Clinton can go ahead and get his dick sucked by Monica Lewinsky in the White House and have sex with her and cheat on the first lady, but we can forgive him because David did far worse. You know what I'm saying? She wasn't married. She's just a little hoe and he got something. It's cool. But these people supposed to be leaders of us all, and they're supposed to be right and be doing things correctly. And, okay, even though he led our troops somewhere where a bunch of troops got killed, we went and fought in wars we weren't supposed to go to. Leaders are not perfect. They make mistakes because the Bible says to make mistakes, and they're going to be forgiven by God. And we're supposed to just turn a blind eye because the Bible says so. I mean, the psyche around it is crazy. And the reason why stuff is not stable and established correctly is because they're thinking of these people and how they think about how these rulers are ruling. They're sick. What they're doing is crazy, but it's given a pass because, one, this is why the government funds the churches, because they know if we get you in the mindset of thinking that we are not perfect like these people in the Bible are, but Romans says that we are put here to rule, you'll forgive us. You'll leave us alone. And the Bible says, pray for those who are in power, that they may rule correctly. Pray for them because they're not perfect. They're going to make mistakes. This is why this is established. This is why the government 501c3, because if we teach these preachers to get you in this kind of mindset, you will excuse the shit that we get ready to do to y'all. And this is what's happening. So as you know, and as people for some reason keep forgetting, the Bible promotes polygamy. It's replete throughout the Bible. David has a bunch of wives. We ain't going to even get into King Solomon yet, but it's crazy. And we see this a lot in the Bible. Polygamy everywhere. Yet we supposed to be married to one person, and never in the Bible where we see it that it's forcing you to be married to just one person. When we see clear as day, even when you go back in ancient times, people have multiple wives. It's just how it was. But the Bible and the church is somehow against polygamy, even though the Bible promotes it. Not that I'm saying it's what you should do. To each his own. But it's one of those things that we got to look at and understand context and where people getting it from. And it's replete through the Old Testament. It's in there. So David has a bunch of wives. And his first son, Amnon, he has a crush on his half-sister, Tamar. Now, David had 2 kids by, one of his first wives, Tamar and Absalom. So Absalom does not like Amnon. He doesn't like him, David's first son. But Amnon has a crush on his sister, Tamar. So he likes her a lot. He is like crazy over her, fantasizing, so on and so forth. And he basically tells one of his friends that, I got a crush on her. He's like, dude, that's like your half sister. But he's like, he gives him an idea of what he should do. So he says to Amnon, he says, this is what you should do. You should pretend like you're sick. Call your father David in and be like, I'm sick. And David's going to be like, okay, what you want me to do? And you just be like, well, send Tamar and prepare some food for me. And then have her feed it to me and I shall feel better. And that's what he does. He takes stuff like, it's a good idea, worth a try. So he basically, act like he's sick. David comes in, he says, well, send my sister Tamar in. She goes in there and she basically whips him up a cake. And she starts to feed it to him. And then, he basically tries to have sex with her. And she like, no, what are you doing? This is like crazy. We can't do this. People going to look at us like we're crazy. We can't be doing this. So he ends up raping her. So he rapes his sister. And basically, after he rapes her, he immediately loses all interest in her. Doesn't like her anymore so much that he kicks her out. And she even mad that she getting kicked out. She's like, oh, you just going to rape me and just throw me out. And she's pissed off, even though he just raped her. So, she leaves and eventually tells her brother, Absalom. So, of course, he tells David what happens. David is pissed. So, basically cuts out Amnon, but he does nothing to Amnon. Even though Amnon just raped his daughter, his own sister, his half-sister, David does nothing. So, Amnon gets away with it basically, but Absalom is pissed. But he lets 2 whole years go by. 2 years go by. And then he basically, devises a plan. And he's like, telling David, hey, we're going to go out. I'm going to take your sons out. All the sons, the brothers, we're going to go out. We're going to go out to the wilderness and chill for a little bit and have some fun. So he's like, I'm going to invite Amnon. And David like, you going to take Amnon? He's like, yeah, I'm taking Amnon. All right, so they go out. But Absalom tells his army, tells his guards, listen, this is what I want y'all to do. I want y'all to basically stand guard and watch so that I'm going to get this dude drunk. And when he's drunk and stumbling around, y'all kill him. And we're going to get out of there. So that's basically what happened. Go there, getting drunk, they kill him, they flee. And the rumor goes out that, Absalom kills all of David's sons, but it's just Amnon. So Absalom basically flees for 3 years. He flees and he's running from David 3 years. David's all sad, he's upset. His firstborn is dead. And then his son flees. And David, again, being who he is, he's pissed, but he's not pissed at Absalom that much. He's like, he's willing to take him back and bring him back. And, he wants to see his son. But Absalom is like crazy as well, like everybody else. And he wants war. He wants to basically take the throne. Now, before he gathers the army, let me not forget this. As I said, David invites him back to Jerusalem. So he comes back. And while there, he basically conspires with one of David's counselors to basically overthrow David. So he goes to Hebron, and he gathers support in Hebron to basically be crowned king. Because some of the people are not pleased with David. Some of the people don't like David. So he gets support from these people in Hebron to basically put together an army to go against David. Now, when David hears about this, he's like, he don't really want bloodshed and war and all this, and he's like, I'm going to leave. So he leaves Jerusalem, and Absalom comes back with the army and everything, and he basically say, okay, well, he's gone, I'm taking his shit. And he crowns Amasa commander. Joab was commander, not no more. Amasa is commander, crowned by Absalom. And David hears about all this, and he's like, we're going to figure something out. But as people still loyal to David that's there in Jerusalem when Absalom gets there, and they basically try to convince Absalom to go ahead. Now is the time. You need to go attack David right now. Get him out of here now while you can, before he puts together an army. But one of the people still loyal to David convinces Absalom to chill out. Don't do it. Don't go attack him right now. Now it's not the right time. So while he's waiting, he basically goes and has sex with David's wives, concubines, just like the prophecy said. People are going to know, somebody had sex with your wives, your neighbors, people that you basically fought with and supposedly was under your rule. So everybody's going to know about this stuff. So he has sex with his wives while he's waiting and everything like that. Meanwhile, David goes and he basically establishes this huge army after getting support. Comes and he kills about 20,000 of Absalom's men. Absalom and his men eventually, they flee, to get ready to go for battle. So David tells Joab, his commander, get to Absalom, don't kill him, chill out, don't kill a guy. So Joab and his army, basically, they chasing him down. While chasing him down, Absalom's head gets stuck in the trees while he's riding. His head gets stuck. So he's stuck. He can't move. So rather than just help him out and take him in custody and so on and so forth and just like bring him to David, Joab is like, fuck that, I'm killing him. So he basically throws spears at his body and kills him while he's hanging, from the tree by his head. He kills Absalom. And it gets back to David, and he's sad. He cries and he goes berserk that his son is dead, and he's upset. So what he does is he makes the same dude that traded on him. Remember, Absalom Absalom made Amasa commander, which was Joab's job. So David's pissed off about what happened, and he keeps Amasa on as commander, not Joab. And of course, Joab is pissed, and so was the other counselors. They pissed. But not only that, the people who also conspired with Absalom to basically overthrow David, he forgives them as well. So these people who was talking behind your back, you thought you was cool with them, they stabbed you in the back, but he still takes them back. You have a small group of people that's scared, a lot of people that traded on him, they get together and they're like, yo, we got to go and attack because he's going to come and kill us. They're worried that David is coming to kill them, but they don't know that David basically forgave everybody, including them, but they don't know that. They're still worried that he's going to kill them later on, so they try to go and put together an army to attack him, but Joab traps him in the city, and the people basically hand him over to Joab, and they're executed. So, Joab is like, I've been putting in work for a long time, but dude, you killed my son. So he basically demotes him and makes Amasa commander. But Joab, being who he is, but this dude is cutthroat, he kills Amasa. He's like, fuck that. This dude's a traitor. I'm gonna kill him. So he kills him. He went in to act like he was gonna shake his hand, I think it was, and then he killed him. And then that was the end of him. And of course, David's pissed about that. So after all the death and destruction caused by these wars and caused by the actions of David, and with him disobeying God, what took place, so many different things happened, and he was supposed to just be perfect and just lead the people. They was doing what they supposed to do, and David was ruling, everything was going right, mind you. All this time, because we're paraphrasing through this whole book, that David's going out, he's killing people, he's killing our people, black people, which is basically what they're alluding to, killing people that's supposedly against God, so on and so forth. All this stuff is supposed to be centered around fidelity. People basically following rules when there's nobody following rules. It's carnage, it's murder, people being stabbed in the back. There's no honor. There's nothing here that's good and righteous when you really pay attention to understand. It's a bunch of bullshit. So basically, you have David rebuild his throne in Jerusalem. Then I think chapter 22 is basically the whole chapter. It's like a song, basically praising God for everything he did for him. And 23 is basically his last word, supposedly, even though he doesn't die until 1 Kings. But contradiction, again. So we have in the beginning of 2 Samuel, contradiction, or supposedly somebody lying. It's the same thing we have at the end of 2 Samuel, and they probably did that for a reason, which we'll touch on later. But you have 2 Samuel 24. It says, listen carefully. And again, the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he moved David against them to say, go number Israel and Judah. So when you're reading that, what is it saying? God was pissed, right? He was angered. He told David to go number Judah and Israel. God told him to go do that. Now, understand what it's saying. He's mad at the people. So he tells David to go and number Israel and Judah. This is what God's telling him to do, because God's mad at the people. So it's like, okay. And then David tells Joab to basically go do it. And it takes like 9 months, I believe, and like 27 days for them to do it. And God is pissed. And it's like, okay, why are you pissed at something you told me to go and do? So I talked about the story before, how, God basically going to kill a bunch of people because of this. But what a lot of people don't understand is when you read 1 Chronicles, this is what it says. 1 Chronicles 21. And Satan stood up against Israel and provoked David to number Israel. And David said to Joab and to the rulers of the people, go number Israel from Beersheba even to Dan, and bring the number of them to me, that I may know it. So who tempted him? It says, clear as day, 2 Samuel, God did. But then it's saying in the 1 Chronicles that it was Satan. So who tempted David? So contradiction or not, what happens? God basically kills a bunch of people. Kills a whole bunch of people because of what David did. Joab basically debates with David not to do it, but David, he does it anyway. Now the whole thing with numbering Israel, one of the things you can look at it, one of the ways you can look at it as if you have no faith. What is the point of knowing how many people you have? If you're trying to count how many troops or how many people you got, then you don't have faith in God. It don't matter how many people you got. God's going to make sure everything is straight. So numbering the people is like, why do that? Now, it's an explanation that Bible scholars give as to why God did this, but it's saying that Satan did this. But remember, we just read that God was angry with the people. So a lot of the religious scholars say, well, God was angry with the people and he sent Satan to do it so that he would get mad and then kill the people. So it's like God is playing games with himself to get upset with the people so he can do something to it, or making an excuse or finding a reason to do something to the people when he could just do something to the people they have already sinned. The Christian's explanation for this is bogus. It's bullshit. And they try to tiptoe around the fact that you have clearly a contradiction. And clearly something that's wrong anyway, because, okay, David numbered the people. Why did 70,000 people lose their lives because of something David did? Which David tries to rectify later, which we'll get into in a second. But in any way you put it, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit. It's like, what's going on? So you read it. David numbers the people. God gets upset. God tells Gad to go to David and tell him that he has three choices, right? He can have 3 years of famine, or he can have 3 months of running from his enemies, or he can have 3 days of pestilence. So, God says, you know what, I'd rather leave it in your hands, and I don't want to be running from people. I don't want nothing else. I'd rather you punish me. So he chooses the 3 days of pestilence, and 70,000 people die. But David is like, it's my fault. I did this. Don't punish the people. It's my fault. I take all the blame. So God basically tells Gad to tell him to basically build, offering for him, a burnt sacrifice, and sacrifice some stuff for me, and everything gonna be cool. And that's what he does. He's basically forgiven, and the plagues end. So one of the things you got to look at, and this is basically how 2 Samuel ends off. So one of the things we got to understand, one, let's go off the whole notion that God was upset with Israel. Let's use that. Even if God is upset with Israel, as I said, he could just go ahead and destroy them and do whatever he want to do. Punish them in any way. He don't need an excuse to do something, to have David do something that's going to give him an excuse to go ahead and punish the people for all the crazy shit they've been doing for a long time. So when you read James chapter 1 verse 13, it says, "Let no man say he is tempted. I am tempted of God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man." So it's saying God does not tempt people. He doesn't tempt people. So the whole thing is God told David to number Israel. So it's like, hey, number Israel, when supposedly this is something wrong to do. So you told me to do it. That's tempting me. I did it. And I numbered the people. And then you killed 70,000 and for me doing something that you told me to do. And then you have Satan. And this is one of the instances where it's trying to give you one of the clues as to who God and Satan is. They're one and the same. As I said, it deals with you, your choices, yin yang, darkness, light, which that DVD is coming up next as well. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal. So he doesn't tempt people. And we can go back to Job. Even though Satan's the one who tempts Job, God makes a deal with Satan in order for Job to be tempted. And clear as day, that's God. God, if you don't say nothing to Satan or tempt Satan to tempt Job, none of this stuff happens with Job. Of course, we'll get into that. But he does. God tempts people all the time. He tempts people in so many different ways and influences people. We can go and look at Pharaoh. He hardened Pharaoh's heart. Remember, he is intervening in free will. It's one of the things that we can talk to Christians about when they talk about, well, we have free will. We're free to do whatever we want. Well, God is sending angels in to destroy shit. God is sending people to tempt people. He's sending Satan to tempt people. He's causing things to happen that's causing people to react. And then their reaction, he's judging them by and condemning them when he's the one who started the shit in the first place. If you send a bunch of people that's hungry and starving and upset and scared out into the wilderness to wander with barely no food or anything like that, they're going to get upset. These people got free will. These people got common sense. They're going to get pissed. You're the one who did this. You got the power to make it go away, but you don't. You allow free will and people's human nature to act, and then you get upset because they acted when you had the power to just basically make it not happen. But you don't. You understand what I'm saying? So this is all designed to get you to be against yourself and your energy, to lose control of it by trying to rationalize the stupid shit of the Bible. And we look at this and we go, through the beginning books of the Bible, the first 10, including this one, and we look at the journey of the Hebrews, these people who are supposed to be special and chosen, and everything they've been through, all of the chances they have been given to live righteousness and live good before God, to basically be given the keys to the planet and the power that they would need. Everything you could possibly want in your physical self, any pleasures, riches, whatever you would want, you would get just by following this God, and they say no. Not only that when when you die, you go to the kingdom and you live forever in bliss and harmony and so on and so forth and power, and you good. But they say no. When they seen the power, when they seen everything, it doesn't make sense. This is going to continue when we get into 1 Kings, which is next. But this is basically how the story of David ends. And we pick up in 1 Kings with the death of David, which we'll get into in the next book. But we got to look at this and compare it to everything else, compare it to the rest of the books, and see it's the same situation where you have people coming into power and sinning against God, who is clearly talking to these people. God is talking to these people. These people are, asking God for stuff and getting it, and God's giving them powers and making sure that they fruitful. And you have everything a man could want, especially back then, but choose to still obey, which we're going to see happens to Solomon, who becomes stinking rich and has everything you could possibly want as a man. But yeah, we'll see. But the story doesn't make sense. It's one of the things that when you know the Bible and the Old Testament and talking to these Hebrews, you can always say, ain't nobody in the world that stupid. I don't care what y'all saying. These supposed to be black folks. We are not this stupid. We holy as hell, we spiritual as hell, we fall to our knees when any sign of any type of spirituality. There's no way we're going to see Moses part the sea. No way we're going to see Moses cure these snake bites and do everything he's done, the miracles and everything like that, and still choose. We witness in the power of God and still choose to go against them. When we obey him, we win, we prosper. We disobey him, we die, we kill, we live in torture, we being beat up and ruled by our enemies. So which one will you choose? And how can any people, I can't think of no people that would be as dumb as these Hebrews. I can't think of no kings that would be as stupid as these kings of Israel. They're retarded. They're doing dumb shit. They're leading people to their dooms. For what? For stuff that they can already get, if they just obey God. The worshiping false idols that's clearly not doing nothing for you is stupid as well. We'll see. But, this is how 2 Samuel ends off. It's not really much to get into it. A lot of it is, when you go through these books, they're detailed and listing a bunch of stupid nonsense that we know is bullshit that pertains to Freemasonry when you really understand it, which we'll get into down the line. And it's a lot of nonsense. But the story itself must be known. You got to understand it, because when you start reading more, as I just read to you from 1 Chronicles, and if David dying in Kings, right? Dead in Kings. Why are we talking about David? Why are we talking about stuff about David in 1 Chronicles? What's going on? So you got to understand what that's about. How is David done in 1 Kings, but we just reading about David in 1 Chronicles? 1 Chronicles. It's the stuff we're going to get into. You'll find out how the Bible was written, how it's put together, and you'll really begin to understand how these books were comprised to give you, the Holy Bible. But it's a bunch of nonsense. Bunch of esoteric stuff that I'm going to explain for you guys to understand. But the stories are important to understand because you're going to see them in movies. A lot of the stuff you find in movies. A lot of these stories that you read from the Bible, you find like the same type of scenarios in movies. And knowing the Bible and knowing these stories is how you can pick up on it and see what they're trying to allude to, which is why we're going through the stories, but at the same time digging out the problems and esoteric stuff with it. And for 2 Samuel, it's not much, but 1 Kings, there's a lot. So we're going to get into 1 Kings, which is the next book. But I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch, purchase, and support. Definitely become a member of Merkable Academy if you are not. It's really going to be worth it in the long run. Everybody who's become lifetime members, it was a smart deal. This deal is not going to last long. So if you're not, you want to get into it before things start really coming to the site, and it's going to change a lot of stuff. So get in now, because you definitely will have regret later on. I promise you that. And these sales will not last long, because I'm going to have people coming in with me on this whole thing, and I won't be able to offer it at this price or at these prices because of partners. But get in now, get locked in. It's worth it. Trust me. Thanks for taking the time to watch. See you guys in 1 Kings.